You're not boring, you're just an introvert. 4 years ago, whenever I was around people, I constantly felt like I needed to be doing more. Christina, say something, you've literally been silent for 10 minutes. You're making it awkward by not saying anything, find something to comment on. You can't keep sitting by yourself. Go and sit with that group over there. You can't keep turning down plans. Just say yes to something, you need to make friends. I was in a weird battle between loving my own company and loving my alone time, but feeling like I had to be something that I wasn't. If you're anything like me, being an introvert in an extroverted world makes you feel like who you are is so out of sync with what the world expects of you. You're in your 20s, you should be going out and having fun and making the most of your youth. But for me, having fun and having a good time is just having a 2-hour YouTube binge or scouring the internet, finding out more about this unique niche topic that I'm just so interested in at the time. The word introvert has slowly become synonymous with quiet, timid, and boring. But they're not the same thing, because here's the truth. You're not boring, you just prefer deep talk over small talk. You're not boring, you just don't feel the need to explain yourself to everyone. And most importantly, you're not boring, you're just an introvert. And here's a few very specific reasons as to why that is. Hey, if you're new, I'm Christina and I make videos for people who are feeling lonely. If you're a people pleaser, overachiever, overthinker, over anything, you're in the right place. A cold, hard truth that I've come to learn is that society places value on extroversion. I honestly think we've slowly entered a world where the more outgoing and loud you seem, or the more like extroverted and vibrant you come across, the more value you are perceived to have in society. I actually have a funny story about this. So I was talking to my mum about some influencer. I actually can't even remember who it was. And my mum was just shocked by how much this influencer was sharing about her life. Like, typical woman in her 40s is like getting used to the fact that 22 and 23-year-olds are like oversharing on the internet and sharing every little detail about what's happening in their lives. And I was like, well, yeah, mum, that's just what happens now. Like, no one ever says, I love that influencer because she's so private. We never hear about what's going on in her life. We never know what's happening. Like, it almost seems like as an influencer, being private and not sharing every detail and inch of your life, every inch of your relationship, every inch of like your kids, what's happening in like your personal life, it seems like you just have to share that for people to have something to relate to. When it comes to some of the bigger YouTubers like Logan Paul or KSI or Emma Chamberlain or even Mr. Beast, no one ever says like, oh yeah, they're so cool, like they're just so quiet and keep to themselves. If anything, I feel like you kind of hear like the opposite. Like, I've sometimes seen on TikTok people talking about how they maybe met Emma Chamberlain and they say like, surprisingly, she's actually quite quiet, or surprisingly, she's quite reserved. Like, I feel like your perceived presentation to society matters a lot more than like how you actually are. If you're perceived to be extroverted, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter that in private you're actually quite reserved or actually quite quiet. Society just places more emphasis on being extroverted. It's more valuable, quote unquote, to be entertaining because society wants entertainment. Because that's where a lot of the value in society is. That's where the numbers are. That's why the influencers have so many followers when they overshare about their relationship. Or that's why Mr. Beast has so many followers, or Logan Paul has so many followers, because they're so extroverted and so loud. It's not that being an introvert is bad. It's just that society has a preference for one of them over the other. And for a lot of things, when it comes down to society, obviously it comes down to money. When it comes to extroversion and being loud and outgoing, that can probably sell a lot more products compared to introversion, or someone that's a lot more reserved, someone that's a lot more quiet, someone that has a strong opinion. Because don't get me wrong, you can be an introverted but have strong opinions, but you just might not be loud with the opinions or like forceful with the opinions. Society's always going to lean towards preferring what has the most numbers, the most money, the potential to sell the most. And in most cases, that tends to lean more towards extroversion. But if you're an introvert, chances are you're exhausted from pretending. As an introvert, if you're living in a society that rewards extroversion, they want entertainment, they want things that are flamboyant and loud, then you're at some point or another, you're going to slowly feel like you have to pretend to be something that you're not. 4 years ago, I felt such the need to mask and like such the need to like pretend to be this Christina, but not that Christina. Like, be the Christina that laughs every time someone cracks a joke and is really cheerful and always smiling, but don't be the Christina that like constantly cancels plans and wants to sit by herself in her room, just wants to have an evening to herself, wants to chill on her own on the weekend. Don't be that Christina. It took me way too long to realize, but all that pretending was for everyone else but myself. Like, I was not doing that for me. I was not sacrificing my weekend plan on my own to do my own thing and just go for a walk, listen to music and like scroll through Instagram. I was not abandoning that to hang out with a bunch of people that I kind of know but I don't really know, to do a bunch of activities that I don't really want to do. I was not doing that for myself. Like, I was doing that for everyone else. I was doing that so people would like me, or so that I could like potentially have more friends. Because for a lot of people, if you are an introvert, I feel like you don't have as many friends. You don't have the stereotypical appearance of what a friend or like a friendship on Instagram Instagram will look like, or a friendship on Pinterest will look like. You might have a long distance friend that you talk to like fairly regularly, but you only see each other once a year. Or you might have those friends where you go to classes together, you're in meetings together, you work together, but you don't see each other outside of work or outside of class, but you're still really good friends. As an introvert, your friendship might look different to everyone else's, and that, in a weird way, that makes you feel more insecure because you're not going on like the vacations together like everyone else is. You're not inviting each other to each other's houses like everyone else does. You're not like so casual about, oh, like come over to my house. Like that's not a casual thing for you to say compared to everyone else. One thing I wish I knew earlier though is that when you are pretending so much and you feel like you have to engage in the small talk when you don't want to, or you're saying yes to plans where you don't really want to hang out with the people there, you just feel a pressure to. Back then when I was doing all that, I was kind of living up to like a false friendship ideal. I was doing what I think friends would do. I was doing what I think it takes to have a friendship. It seems like people do this when they're friends, and it seems like this is what a good friendship looks like. I guess I'll do this. But it was all based on pretending. Like it was all based on me like going out when I didn't want to go out, or talking about things that I just didn't find interesting. Like it was all pretending. And what I've only realized now is that when you do that for so long and that is your foundation, like you think this is what a friendship looks like, you don't actually give yourself the chance to see what a real friendship looks like. Like now I know my friendships, they're not conventional. I don't have a massive friendship group. I feel like my friends are all spread out and I talk to them regularly, but I don't see them that often, kind of like I described earlier. And I've come to realize now, just because that's not what everyone's friendship looks like, doesn't mean that that's a bad thing. This is going to sound cringe, but I do feel like sometimes friendships are like fingerprints. Like everyone's is so different. Your friendship situation might be amazing and like wonderful, and I love that for you, but it might look completely different to mine. But my situation is also like amazing and like solid, and I'm so happy with it. Like everyone's fingerprint is so different. Same with everyone's friendship. If you go comparing, you're gonna drive yourself insane trying to pretend and be something that you're not. And honestly, I've come to learn the one thing about pretending is that it just makes you feel more alone. It makes you feel more alone because you're kind of stuck in your head, calculating and planning what you have to do and what you have to say and how many times you have to offer to do this and how many times they've offered to do that. You're kind of keeping track of everything and like some sort of algorithm in your head, planning out, this is what it takes to make friends, or this is what it takes to not be boring. This is what it takes for me to be seen as cool and interesting and finally be invited to stuff, or this is what it takes for them to finally like me. Like you're kind of tracking it in an algorithm and you have to do things. But honestly, all that tracking and all that pretending only makes you feel lonely because it makes you feel isolated from everyone else. Now, this is an important thing. Being lonely versus being alone. As an introvert, you genuinely just love being alone. You just love your alone time. You could leave me alone for a weekend, maybe even a whole entire week by myself. I'd honestly have a good time. Like I have things to entertain myself with. I don't need the stereotypical extroverted things and extroverted activities to go out and do to have fun. Like I genuinely just love like doing my own thing on my laptop, getting work done, reading a book, watching videos on YouTube, watching stuff on Netflix. I'm obsessed with owning Manhattan. It's like the New York version of Selling Sunset. I watched it in like 3 days. Like I've got things to keep me busy. I enjoy being alone. Versus being lonely, that's a bit more different. You can be in a massive room of people and still feel lonely. Or you can have a boyfriend or a girlfriend and still feel lonely. You can be at a family dinner, like a Thanksgiving, and feel lonely. You could be in a group full of people that you were trying to impress and trying to get them to like you and still feel lonely. For me, feeling alone is very much like, I'm enjoying being by myself. I'm enjoying my own company. But feeling lonely is, I feel disconnected and I don't feel seen by anyone. 4 years ago when this was me, I had both. Like I had moments when I was on my own, doing my own thing, like having the time of my life. But then I had times when I was like pretending and putting on a mask and then being around people where I just felt like isolated. Like, okay, yeah, I've cancelled my own plans to do my own thing in my room. I wasn't going to do very much anyway, but I cancelled my plans to be in my room on my weekend by myself to be with these people. But now that I'm with these people, I just feel like no one like gets me. Like I'm in the room and I'm trying to be cool and say these things and pretend to be more extroverted and outgoing than I am. But like no one's seeing the real Christina. People are seeing this fake version that I'm pretending to be. That sort of thing will make you feel lonely, but not alone. Sometimes I think some of us as introverts probably use being alone as like a coping mechanism. We kind of retreat into our own little corner of the world. We kind of like stick in our rooms because we don't want to feel that lonely feeling that we'll know we'll get if we're around people for too long. Like we'll get that lonely feeling of feeling disconnected, feeling like no one sees us, feeling like we have to pretend if we're in like a group for too long. Like if you stick around for those after work, small talk drinks for too long, you know you're going to end up getting just emotionally drained and exhausted because talking about work politics another small talk just is not your jam, you'd rather not. Because a huge thing I've noticed for introverts, like for myself, a huge thing I've noticed for myself is that I thrive on one-to-one, but I don't really thrive in groups. When it comes to conversation, I could have a solid, good, like nice conversation one-to-one with someone. Like, I feel like when I'm talking to someone, it's just me and them in our own little bubble talking about things. I feel like time moves at a different speed. Like, I feel like I'm a really good conversationalist one-to-one. Like, this happened recently when I started my job and we were meeting new people. We had this like welcome dinner where people could like meet new doctors at the job. When I was meeting other doctors and being like, hi, where are you from? What university did you go to? I felt like my conversations were always better when I was talking to someone, just me and them. The moment that like more people come in and, oh, hi, come over, like the more people join. But I do feel like my prime is one-to-one. Like, the moment that more people come join, I find myself like getting more and more quiet, and I kind of like just go to my natural, like I'm just not gonna, I don't have anything to say actually, I don't have anything to add. One-to-one, I feel like I'm so chatty and you'd be like, Christina, you're talking so much. But then in a group, I feel like I'm a little bit more quiet and reserved. And I've come to learn now that like I don't force myself to talk anymore. Like back in the day, 4 years ago, I would have been kicking myself to say something and don't be so quiet, Christina. It's been 10 minutes, you've not said anything. Like, I don't do that anymore. I'll sit and say nothing for 10 minutes. I don't really care anymore, because the ultimate thing that you're trying to do in a conversation, you're not trying to be outgoing. You're not trying to be loud. You're not trying to be funny. You just need to be yourself. And if being yourself, like I've come to realize, that means sometimes I'm saying nothing in a group, or sometimes one-to-one, that means me talking a lot. If that's me being myself, that's me being myself. Like, I remember I was at a party with some influencers back in the, like a couple weeks ago, months ago. And I remember the same thing happened. Like, I was talking to people one-to-one. I was finding out so much about them, like their travel. Like, someone was telling me that they went to Harvard and like they were telling me about like how they travel across America. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. But then the moment that like more people come over, more people come join, and they're like talking about America as well, I'm like, I just say less and less. And before I would have kicked myself about that. Like, be cool and interesting, Christine, like say something. But now I'm just like, that's just not me. I'm just being myself now. I'd throw in like a couple ad libs. Like, I'd be like, no way. Oh my God, so cool. Like, I'd throw in like a couple of things, but like there's no force anymore. You have to question, like you have to ask yourself, how much of you being frustrated in a social setting is you just like putting pressure on yourself? If you took that pressure away and were just like, I'm just going to be myself. I'm just going to be like who I am. I'm just going to be authentic. I don't know what that looks like. Because for a lot of us, we don't know who we really are. I spoke about this a lot more in my How to Be Your Authentic Self video. A lot of us, we don't know who we are, like deep internally. That's okay. I still sometimes don't fully know who I am. I feel like that's something that you just kind of unpack slowly over time. It's not something that where like you can journal your way to it and like you've arrived. Like, there is no arriving at your true self. That's my belief anyway. But half of the frustration of you being not good enough or not funny enough, not cool enough, is just because you're putting pressure on yourself. Sometimes when you are this sort of person, it's very easy to slip into feeling like you're on the outside looking in. I am currently editing, but wanted to quickly jump in and say I'm going to be doing a YouTube live on the 22nd of September to talk about all things which I'm kind of talking about in this video. It's just going to be a general Q&A/chit chat on live about confidence, social anxiety, introversion, all the stuff I talk about on my channel. So if you can make it at this time on Sunday 22nd, then definitely come join. Like, because as an introvert, chances are you're like a very good listener. You're so empathetic. You can do none of the talking and let everyone else talk and just take it all in. That is literally what I do in a group. And now I used to see this as a bad thing. I used to see this as like, I'm on the outside, I'm looking in, I'm not involved, I'm disconnected, I'm feeling lonely. Whereas now I just see, I don't even see it as a bad thing. A huge chunk of why I was unhappy before, which is my perspective, like all the same things arguably happen now to what happened 4 years ago. I just don't see them the same way. I don't see me being on the outside looking in as a bad thing. I just see it as like, I'm just not going to talk as much now. I'm just going to kind of like keep to myself and like let everyone else talk about America and their travels. And I had this recently where I was at work. We were having lunch where we kind of, there's like a doctor's lounge where all the doctors go to have lunch. It's like a bit of a break. And there, I sat down with someone like one-to-one. We were just talking, because I'm a one-to-one girly. And it was totally fine. She sat on the couch. I sat down in the chair. They were kind of a little bit far apart, but it was just like a convenient place to sit. We were just chatting away. Then a few more people came and like a group came over, kind of sat down, spread themselves out. And then I quickly realized like where I sat was a bit of an awkward spot. Like when everyone eventually sat down, people like weirdly had their backs to me, and it felt like I was on the outside. Like I actually wasn't kind of included anymore, just because I chose an awkward place to sit. And it was a bit awkward because it was like, oh, I went from chatting to this girl, like we were talking about a lot of things, but then I was like kind of like awkwardly excluded, and it's no one's fault. Like I chose to sit there, but then it just kind of made me realize that all those times that I felt excluded and I felt like I'm not involved, sometimes they're just not in your control. Sometimes you put so much pressure on yourself and you tell yourself that you're not good enough. You have such negative self-talk. Sometimes it's not even your fault. Sometimes it's just stuff that's outside of your control. I remember like back then when I was at work having my lunch, and it literally wasn't that deep. It was just a lunch break. But I felt awkward the way that everyone else was talking. And like there'd be like odd silent moments. And I'd be like, should I say something? Should I not? Like I felt like all the old thoughts that I would have came back in that moment because I felt like so excluded, and I've not felt that way in a long time. So I think it probably took me way back. When everyone in the group was talking and they were kind of like doing their own thing and like had their backs to me, like I just thought like I'm just gonna sit on my phone because it's gonna be weird to try and like get involved and talk over people and like literally like talk over the backs of them. So I just thought I'm just gonna do my own thing. And I was just like, I don't care if this looks antisocial, because at the end of the day, like I'm not doing things to prove myself to people anymore. I'm not gonna put on that mask and pretend. I'm gonna force myself to say something. I'm a big believer in that you have to do what makes you feel good about yourself. If that means doing your own thing, if that means being alone, isolating yourself, like doing things in your room, ultimately you're not living life for other people. You're living life for yourself. And that's not in a selfish way. That's not to say like do your own thing and ignore everyone else and everyone else is like not important. Like that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you can come to social events and social gatherings, and you can come to meetings and parties more of yourself and more happy and more genuine when you have given yourself time alone. Because as an introvert, that is what recharges you. You can't expect to have energy and come from a good place when all you've done is drain yourself in social settings, in conversations, at work. If all you've done is drain yourself, like when are you going to have the energy? That's why I think one of the biggest signs of confidence is just not trying to prove yourself. People that are genuinely confident, they might not even seem super loud or like in your face sort of confidence, but they're the sort of quiet confidence. I feel like they're the sort of people that don't try to prove themselves. They're completely okay if you understand them or if you don't. They're completely okay if like you agree with their opinion or you don't. They're just not trying to prove themselves. I spoke about this a lot more in my 7 signs you're more confident than you think video, where one of the signs was you're not trying to prove yourself. That is a sign you're way more confident than you think. Let me know what video you'd like to see next. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.